I danced with my neighbor at a wedding. Then she said, "Everyone saw you choose me." I never expected one slow dance to change my life. It started with a smile across a crowded wedding hall. By the time the music ended, my neighbor leaned close enough for only me to hear her whisper, "Everyone saw you choose me." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I looked around, dozens of eyes were already on us. Some smiled knowingly, others whispered behind their hands. And in that single moment, I realized something terrifying. I hadn't just asked my neighbor to dance. Without meaning to, I had started a story that everyone else believed had begun long before I even noticed it. My name is Ethan, and until that Saturday, Emily Carter was simply the woman who lived across the street. She was 29, worked remotely as an architect, and somehow managed to keep the prettiest garden on Maple Street alive through every season. We weren't close. We waved. Sometimes we talked while collecting our mail. Occasionally she'd borrow my ladder. Once I helped her carry a heavy bookshelf inside her house. That was the extent of our relationship. At least that's what I believed. The wedding belonged to my cousin Noah, who was marrying his college sweetheart. The ceremony was held in a restored countryside barn, covered in fairy lights, wildflowers, and soft white curtains that moved gently with the evening breeze. I arrived alone. Emily arrived about 20 minutes later. I hadn't known she was invited. She noticed me first. "Ethan?" I turned around. She wore a deep emerald green dress that caught the golden sunset perfectly. For a second, I honestly wondered if I'd walked into the wrong wedding. "You know Noah?" I asked. She laughed. "I know the bride." Small world. Apparently. We ended up sitting at neighboring tables. Conversation came easily, much easier than it ever had across our driveways. She told me stories about designing homes for young families. I told her about my job restoring antique furniture. She confessed she secretly hated weddings because everyone kept asking when she'd get married. I admitted I usually skipped weddings because they reminded me of my last breakup. For the first time, we weren't neighbors. We were simply two people enjoying each other's company. Hours slipped by. Dinner ended. The DJ invited everyone onto the dance floor. I had absolutely no intention of dancing. Emily didn't either. Perfect. Or so I thought. Then Noah grabbed the microphone. "If you're sitting down," he announced, "you're coming up here." People groaned, laughed, started pulling each other toward the dance floor. Emily looked at me. "I think we're trapped." "I think you're right." The first few songs were upbeat. Everyone danced in groups. Children ran between adults. Grandparents clapped along. Eventually the music slowed. Couples naturally paired together. Emily glanced around. So. Neither of us moved. Finally, I sighed. "Would you like to dance?" She stared at me for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then she smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." Her hand fit naturally into mine. We walked toward the center of the dance floor. I wasn't much of a dancer. "I should warn you," I said. "I step on feet. I'll take my chances." The music was soft, old-fashioned, the kind that encouraged conversations instead of showing off dance moves. We swayed gently. Nothing dramatic, nothing romantic, or so I believed. Emily looked unusually thoughtful. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. That wasn't a nothing face." She smiled without answering. A minute later she leaned closer. "My comments and acts." "So?" "Everyone saw you choose me." I laughed. "What?" "You could have asked anyone. I only really know you." She raised one eyebrow. "You still chose me." I shrugged. It seemed obvious. Her smile faded into something quieter. "Maybe to you." Before I could ask what she meant, the song ended. People applauded. The moment disappeared. Or so I thought. As we returned to our table, Noah's grandmother stopped us. "There you two are." Emily smiled politely. "Hello." The older woman grinned. "I've been waiting years." Emily blinked. "Years? I always knew you'd end up together." I nearly choked on my water. "We're neighbors." She waved dismissively. "Mm-hmm." Then she walked away before either of us could respond. Emily laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. "This wedding is getting weird." It really is. It didn't stop there. Throughout the evening, more people made comments. "When's the first date? You two look perfect. I've never seen Ethan smile this much." One even asked how long we'd been dating. I corrected them every time. "We're just neighbors." Yet every correction somehow sounded less convincing than the previous one. When the reception ended, we walked outside together. The night air felt cool after hours inside the warm barn. Our cars were parked near each other. Emily stopped beside hers. I had fun. So did I. She hesitated. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I almost didn't come tonight." "Why?" "I knew you might be here." I frowned. "You avoided the wedding because of me?" She laughed softly. "Not exactly." "Then why?" She looked down at the gravel. "Because I've had a crush on you for almost 2 years." Everything around us seemed to fall silent, even the crickets. I searched her face, convinced she was teasing. She wasn't. She nodded. "I know. I had absolutely no idea." I noticed. She smiled sadly. "You always smiled, always helped me, always remembered my birthday." I know. The way she said those 2 words broke my heart, because she had expected exactly that answer. "I never wanted to make things awkward," she continued, "so I stayed quiet. But tonight," she laughed nervously, "when you asked me to dance for one song, I got to pretend." "Pretend what?" "That maybe, just maybe, you were choosing me for real." I didn't know what to say. Not because I didn't care, because my heart suddenly felt impossibly full. I replayed every interaction we'd ever had. Her bringing cookies after I recovered from the flu, the flowers she secretly planted near my mailbox after my mother passed away, the extra cup of coffee she'd somehow always have whenever we bumped into each other during morning walks. Had I really missed all those signs? Or had I simply never allowed myself to see them? "I should go," she whispered. Before I could respond, she climbed into her car. She smiled one last time, then drove away. I stood alone beneath the wedding lights long after everyone else had left. Sunday morning felt strangely empty. I looked across the street. Emily's curtains were closed. No movement. Around lunchtime, I decided I needed groceries. Halfway to my truck, I heard someone call my name. "Mrs. Jenkins." Our 80-year-old neighbor. "Ethan." "Morning." She smiled mischievously. "So?" I already knew. "You heard." The whole neighborhood heard. "How?" "The bride's aunt lives 3 houses over." Jenkins leaned on her cane. "Don't waste this opportunity." "What opportunity?" "Some people spend years hoping the right person lives nearby. You've had her across the street." Then she shuffled away before I could answer. That afternoon I found myself remembering little things. The time Emily spent 3 hours helping me search for my escaped dog. The homemade soup she left on my porch when I had pneumonia. The excitement in her voice whenever we accidentally spent longer talking than planned. Had she been quietly loving me all along? More importantly, why was I smiling every time I remembered her? Monday evening I knocked on her front door. No answer. Tuesday, nothing. Wednesday, still nothing. I began worrying she'd gone away. Thursday evening I finally saw her watering her roses. She froze when she noticed me. I walked over. "Hey." "Hi." Neither of us knew what to say. Finally I spoke. I've been trying to see you. I know. You were avoiding me. A little. Why? She smiled sadly. Because rejection is easier from a distance. My chest tightened. Emily. End. Pose. I shouldn't have told you. I'm glad you did. She looked confused. I rubbed the back of my neck. I'm rubbed the back of my neck. She laughed despite herself. I've noticed. I spent 4 days realizing something. What? I missed you. Her smile disappeared. I mean, when you weren't outside. I mean, when I couldn't wave across the street. I mean, when I didn't accidentally run into you. I mean, the neighborhood felt wrong. She stared silently. I don't know exactly when it happened, I admitted. But somewhere between fixing your bookshelf and dancing with you, I stopped seeing you as just my neighbor. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I don't need pretending anymore. She whispered, Are you sure? Instead of answering, I held out my hand. Would you dance with me again? She looked around. We're standing in the middle of the street. I know. There isn't any music. I know. Cars could wait. Neighborhoods could stare. For once, we were here. I didn't care. Emily placed her hand in mine. We swayed beneath the orange glow of the streetlights, while sprinklers clicked softly across nearby lawns. Mrs. Jenkins peeked through her curtains. Then, another neighbor. Soon, several porch lights turned on. People were definitely watching. Emily laughed through happy tears. They're all looking. I know. They're going to talk. I know. She rested her head lightly against my shoulder. What do we tell them tomorrow? I smiled. The truth. And what's that? I looked into the eyes of the woman I'd unknowingly been walking toward for 2 years. That everyone was right. She squeezed my hand. About what? I smiled wider. That I chose you. This time, I knew exactly what I was doing. And if the entire neighborhood happened to witness it again, I couldn't have been happier.